What's up, everybody? Lines on Paper here, and this is my review of the Trial of Magneto, issue number 1. Before I get too far into that, my comic book, Malevolent Rising, issue number 5, is currently funding on Indiegogo. It's only got about 2 days, a little less than 2 days, until this campaign ends, so I really hope you check it out. Link in the bio. Get your copy and my 2021 sketchbook, both at the same site. So, on to the Trial of Magneto. Not this Trial of Magneto. This new one of 2021. So Trial of Magneto is brought to us by Leah Williams. She is the writer of the X Factor reboot most recently, and that's really the only place I know her work from, so that's what I reference to. So I'm going to be spoiling this book a bit in my review because I want to talk about one of the main problems that it has, which is the problem of endless retcons, status quo changes, and all of the other flubs that have kind of been thrown into the mutant universe here at Marvel. So this has just ended up being kind of a prime masterclass into what's currently wrong with some of their storytelling, and I just literally finished reading it minutes ago, and I want to get my thoughts on it out while they're fresh in my head. So for those of you who didn't know, the Hellfire Gala ended with the Scarlet Witch being found murdered in a shrub outside of the big ballroom, and that's where the story kicks off. So we actually have this opening scene, which is X Factor, who is investigating the murder with various other X characters that have expertise in tracking and other powers to kind of help in this area, overseeing them. So I actually thought this part was kind of cool. You get this little scene of a lot of mutants using their powers in kind of a CSI style manner, which was really neat to see. But part of the problem with this scene, and it's a carryover from the X Factor book, which is it ends up being this just kind of weird pissing contest between X Factor characters and the other X-Men, because the X Factor characters are upset that other people are helping with the investigation, which is odd to me. Rachel Summers makes a comment that she feels like she's being babysat, which for anyone who's an X fan, I don't know why Rachel Summers would ever need to be babysat. She's kind of proven herself on multiple teams. Not only that, but from what I understood of the X Factor comic, they say in this book that they were formed to investigate murders. I thought they were formed to investigate a murder. That was my recollection of their origins. So now they're just saying that they are the homicide detectives of the X-Men universe, and they're really upset that people like Beast and Wolverine are trying to help them. I mean, they've got Dakin taking lead of like forensics on this, and he's their third best tracker probably at this point. I mean, Wolverine's sitting there at one point even pointing out things that he missed. So it kind of ruined the scene. It just kept getting brought up, and it would bog the procedural element that I think they were going for down, because they would trace her steps, they would use her powers to create these psychic images, and Dakin would use his tracking abilities to say she ran here, she fell here, the attacker did this, and then they would just kind of stop and say, oh, well, if X Factor wasn't here, they would just let us do our job, but nobody trusts us because we're sad X Factor, and whatever, shut up. Bunch of just mutant teen drama that I don't like. I didn't like it in the X Factor book. I don't like it here. So moving on, the Quiet Council meets, and they're waiting for the official word to come down, but everyone's pretty certain that everybody knows that Magneto is the prime suspect, because the first thing that happened at the end of the Hellfire Gala was Wolverine inspected the area and said, "Find me Magneto." So the Quiet Council gets together because they're going to vote to resurrect whether or not to resurrect Scarlet Witch. And the problem is, because they've retconned Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver to no longer be mutants, they no longer have the option of the Krakoan resurrection. And even though Cerebro has backups of both of them from before the retcon happened, their laws forbid them from resurrecting non-mutants. And so they have a vote whether or not to resurrect her, and it actually doesn't pass. Even freaking Storm votes against resurrecting Wanda. They were teammates, for God's sake. So, okay, Storm, I didn't realize you had such a problem with Wanda all of a sudden. But yeah, Storm and Emma Frost, of course, you just never liked her, and she, Emma Frost and a few others vote against her, and it's why is this even a thing? I mean, resurrect her. See if you can figure out what happened, even though they at least gave us the reason that the backup that Xavier has wouldn't have been up to the murder anyway, so it wouldn't have helped him in the investigation. But I mean, still, she's an Avenger and she died on your island. It was kind of your fault. So moving on, Magneto throws a temper tantrum, throws some chairs around, and tries to crush Xavier's head with his Cerebro helmet, and they stop him, and he just kind of leaves. So he wanders the island for a bit, and then the X-Men show up and basically tell him to surrender, and Magneto says, "Psh, make me." And we get to have an good old-fashioned X-Men Magneto dust-up for a bit. And in this scene, we have this really kind of peculiar exchange between Magneto and Polaris, because Polaris shows up and tries to out-magnetize Magneto, I guess. And she has this whole dialogue about how Magneto has left this trail of killed and battered women in his wake, and that every daughter and wife he's ever had has been mistreated and ultimately killed. And really? Is that fair? Magneto always really loved the Scarlet Witch, from my recollection of the character. I mean, he always felt that her powers were a bit of a danger, so he kind of held her back. But that was back in the day when she was part of, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I remember at House of X, it was the rest of the mutant community who were going to have Wanda killed or have her put to death after the whole Desolation event, or the Avengers Disassembled event rather, happened. And that's what started the whole House of M thing. Was Quicksilver was going to rescue her because he didn't want his sister executed. He goes to Magneto. He says, hey, they're going to hurt Wanda. And Magneto is there in a flash to bail his daughter out. So I just don't understand where this entire scene came from. It came really out of left field for me. And it just seemed like we're going to shoehorn a little bit of the patriarchy in for you, X-fans. So enjoy that. And so they end up getting the better of Magneto. Quicksilver shows up and basically beats him into a coma. And they take him to the healing gardens, quote unquote, to be fixed. And they go to Jean and they say, hey, Jean, can you just read his mind now that we got a stupid helmet off him and just tell us whether or not he did it? And Jean says, no, I can't really do that for reasons. And so we're to be continued. And that is issue 1 of the Trial of Magneto. What a mess this whole era of X-Men is. So let's try to unpack the various problems with the storyline. So first of all, the endless retconning of the Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver to a lesser degree, but really the Witch. So she's gone from a mutant with probability controlling powers to a mutant with probability controlling powers that can access magic, to a mutant whose mutant power is the ability to access magic, to an inhuman, to just a full-on magical being. So they can't seem to make up their mind on the Scarlet Witch. And where these type of problems come into effect is when you're trying to tell a story like this, because you start having questions. If she's a full-on magical being who's this all-powerful, how is it that somebody's able to get the drop on her and just choke her out in the middle of a party? That seems a bit underwhelming, and I'm sure they're going to have an explanation for this, so I'm going to let that one slide for now. They tried to kind of pass it as, oh, well, her hands were bound. Well, I didn't know she needed her hands to do her magic. I thought, when she did the no more mutants thing, she just literally had to say the words, and no more mutants, and she altered all of reality. So it's just odd. I'm guessing there's going to be a reason, and that's probably one thing that's going to make sense. So as reading it, it's one of those where if you know the knowledge of the Marvel Universe, and especially the knowledge of the X-Men and Scarlet Witch, you're just kind of like, really? I'm not understanding this. And, I mean, then you got the whole retconning of Scarlet Witch is no longer Magneto's biological daughter. They touched on during the Hellfire Gala, that little moment where he's like, oh, well, I still kind of think of you as my kid, even though all those memories turned out are fake. But I don't know. This is, again, where retcon gets us in trouble. This could have been a lot more of a personal and intimate and gut-wrenching story had it actually been his biological daughter that this had happened to. And we're seeing more of the rage of a father whose daughter has been murdered, or the rage of a father who murdered his daughter if he ends up actually being the killer. So that's another oddball thing. And then there's the whole story of Magneto and his trail of dead women in his wake. As far as I know, Magneto's only casualty was his wife, and she wasn't killed by Magneto. She was, Magda was killed by, I can't remember, I think that's been retconned a couple of times too, but his wife's been killed by other people, or was killed by either anti-mutant extremists, I can't remember, or if it was actually another mutant character. Either way, it wasn't, Magneto didn't kill his own wife. He's never hurt any of his daughters, to my knowledge, nor any of his female subordinates. I know he's had problems with Mystique in the past, but I mean, good Lord, who hasn't? So he doesn't. It just kind of seemed like a weird, out of left field attack, and kind of unfair to Magneto's character. That's never really been him, and it was a out of left field 2-page long conversation in this book. So the rest of problems I have are just kind of with the era of X book that we're in. So we have the whole, why can't we just resurrect the Scarlet Witch problem? They go with, well, she's not a mutant, so we don't resurrect non-mutants. Well, why? I mean, she's still an Avenger. She's still a hero. She died on your island when you were guaranteeing her safety. It seems like it would have been a no-brainer. Why, of all the people that are going to be the deciding vote to vote her down, why Storm? Why is she saying no to this? What did Scarlet Witch ever do to you, Aurora? I mean, good Lord, I understand Sinister and the White Queen, but you? That's and same with Exodus. Exodus is supposed to be really loyal to Magneto, and you'd think he would have voted with Magneto on this, but not even he does, and that's just based on me knowing the characters. This is how you kind of would think this would go down. Why can't Jean Grey just look into his mind and get the answer to this question, or Charles Xavier, or Emma Frost, or Psylocke, or any of their other endless psychics? I'm pretty sure there's a character, I think it's Cypher, who is a human lie detector. You don't even need Magneto to take his helmet off. You can just ask him the question in front of him, and he can tell you if he's lying or not. Or actually, I think it's Sage. I think that's one of Sage's powers. So just sit him down and have that person ask, did you murder Wanda or not? Yes or no? I mean, we just saw in the Hellfire Gala, they literally held an election and probed every mutant on Earth's mind and were able to tabulate a vote in the blink of an eye with the psychic abilities of the mutants of Krakoa, and they can't even just read into Magneto's mind and see what happened 24 hours ago. That was hard for me. That's just a hard one to believe. I understand when he's got the helmet, he's protected from all that, whatever. But I mean, they beat him up and they took the helmet off him. Why can't we do it? And then for Jean Grey to say, oh, well, he might be thinking of something else. So who cares if he's thinking of something else, Jean? You're one of those powerful psychics on the planet. You go into people's minds with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. You're saying, oh, well, he might be thinking of baseball statistics. How am I going to figure out, what heads from tails from that? I don't know sports. So, I don't know. That was just really weird. The whole book, I'm reading it, and I'm like, why doesn't this happen? Why don't they do this? Why on earth aren't they resurrecting Scarlet Witch? Why don't the Avengers demand that they resurrect Scarlet Witch, knowing that they have the ability to? Why are the Avengers not involved in the investigation of what happened at all? Iron Man might have some helpful gadgetry that could help discern what happened. Same with Vision. Good Lord, you could have brought Circe in. She's another psychic who's not a mutant. Maybe she'd have better luck. Who even knows? There are endless resources that could have been brought to bear with this, and I understand the X-Men right now are very isolationist on their little island, and they're going to try to keep the Avengers out, but I just don't see that storyline taking. I mean, if you tell Captain America one of his people were killed while tending a ball on your island, I really don't think you have the ability to keep the Avengers off that island. I think Iron Man's going to find a way through that gate. They're going to come through and they're going to say, stand aside, we're going to figure this out. So, I don't know. It was an okay story. I like the idea of the X-Men having to go through this forensic story. It's just so many little things in here just take it down, and you end up kind of dying the death of 1,000 pinpricks. So you got the little power struggle with X Factor and the other X-Men of, oh, why can't you just leave us alone and let us do this on our own? That was stupid. I mean, this is a little bit beyond, hey, we're going to send you to New Orleans to track down a mutant killer. This is an Avenger was killed on an island while we were throwing a party. So yeah, we're going to want to get this right. So sorry, Prodigy and Dakin. We're going to go ahead and let Beast, Celia Reyes, and Wolverine maybe take point on this. Then you had the whole Magneto is all of a sudden the patriarchy argument. I didn't get that. That was really out of left field. You could have had a really cool moment where Lorna was genuinely conflicted about having to take her father down. While at the same time, if she figures if he would have done this to Wanda, why couldn't she do this to herself? There was a lot of good story possibilities she could have done with Polaris, and they just really went with the one that's the most out of left field, and just to get us some, little woke checkbox points. So that was kind of weak. You got the Quiet Council just, we're not going to resurrect you. Sorry, Scarlet Witch, we still don't forgive the no more mutants thing. That a couple of them brought that up, and that's fair. But still, Storm, really? Come on now. You guys were both Uncanny Avengers together. So, I mean, if you can forget everything you know about the Marvel Universe, you might get some enjoyment out of this. I'm curious to see where they take the story, so definitely going to follow it just because I want to see who the killer was and see if they find a way to kind of explain away all of these things. But anyway, that's my story. That's my thoughts on the Trial of Magneto. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my review. If you read the book, I'd like to know your opinion. What other ways could you find for the X-Men to have solved this problem with a lot less trouble and just a lot more efficiently than they're doing now, which seems to be the worst possible solution they could find to this problem? If you read the first one, did it hook you enough to read the rest of the series? I've already commented that unless something changes, I'm sticking through with the X-Men through Inferno, and then I'm dropping the X books because it's just too stupid and weird. And then they announced that the Hellfire Club's coming back, or Hellfire Gala's back next year, and I want no part of that horrible swamp of misery. So let me know in the comments below what you thought. And also, while you're down there, please hit like, hit that little thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber, share the video if you like, help the channel grow a bit. Please check out my comic, Malevolent Rising, issue number 5, available on Indiegogo, link in the bio. And thanks again. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.